Shedeur Sanders started out with the first team offense today. Deshaun Watson went with the twos. Multiple Browns reporters report Deshaun Watson's 7-on-7 experience has been bad, like really, really bad.
Day 6 of Browns training camp, and the numbers do not lie. Shedeur Sanders just put together his best outing yet, closing out a 2-minute drill with a scoring drive, while Deshaun Watson walked away with a stat line nobody wants attached to their name. Bernie Kosar was impressed. The fans were not quiet about who they wanted under center, and by the end of the day, multiple Browns reporters were all saying the exact same thing about Deshaun's 7-on-7 reps. It was bad, really bad. Here is everything that went down on day 6 and why the quarterback picture in Cleveland just got a lot more interesting. Let's start with how the day actually opened, because it did not start pretty for anybody wearing an offensive jersey. The first section of 11-on-11 belonged completely to the defense and the defensive line. Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and Dillon Gabriel all took snaps in that stretch, and more than a few of those dropbacks ended the same way, with a sack. That is just training camp in August. Defenses get ahead of offenses this time of year, especially once the pads come on and the installs are still early. But here is where it gets interesting. While the defense was teeing off early, one small detail from Shedeur stood out to the people actually watching the tape closely. He stepped up inside the pocket to hit Gage Larvidan, and on the surface that might sound routine. It is not. If there was one real coaching point on Shedeur coming out of last season, it was exactly this: staying calm under pressure and stepping up in the pocket instead of drifting or bailing outside of it. That was the one true development area analysts kept circling back to, from the coaching staff all the way to former players breaking down his tape. So when he shows it live, in pads, on day 6, that is not a small thing. That is Todd Monken and the quarterback coaching staff putting in real work behind the scenes, and it's starting to show up on the field in a live setting. And it did not stop there. As the practice window went on, Shedeur kept finding completions, a toe-tap sideline grab with Isaiah Bond, 2 feet clearly in bounds, a wheel route to Luke Floria that landed right in stride, a dig route over the middle to Denzel Boston that showed off his timing and anticipation in the pocket. None of these are throws you make if your footwork and your operation are still shaky. They are throws you make once the little things start clicking together. That is the theme people kept circling back to on day 6, not the arm talent, because nobody has ever questioned that part of his game. It was the operation, the footwork, the timing, staying inside structure instead of drifting off platform. And according to people who have been at every single practice this camp, that part of his game has improved noticeably since day 1. So while the defense may have won the opening stretch of team drills, Shedeur was quietly building the kind of tape that actually matters heading into the preseason. And it's worth pointing out who he was doing this with, too. Denzel Boston has been getting first-team receiver reps and standing out inside the first-team huddle, and Isaiah Bond has been a consistent standout throughout camp, both of them building real chemistry with Shedeur in these live team periods. That matters, because building timing with a receiver room in August is exactly what shows up on Sundays once the season actually starts. It's not just Shedeur developing on his own, it's Shedeur developing with the exact group of guys he's going to need to trust when the games actually count.
Real quickly, I want to show you guys Shedeur Sanders stepping inside the pocket, hitting Gage Larvidan, which is no surprise. But we see that Shedeur is actually stepping inside the pocket. Speaks volumes as far as the QB coach, Todd Monken, those guys really truthfully developing Shedeur Sanders, because if it was one thing I could say Shedeur Sanders needed to work on was stepping inside the pocket.
Stop right there, because this next part is where the two quarterbacks' days start to look very different. Now let's get into the situational work, because this is where the day really started to separate. Both Shedeur and Watson ran back-to-back 11-on-11 series backed up near their own goal line, working through the kind of situational football that actually shows up in real games. Both quarterbacks dealt with false start penalties in that stretch, so this was not a case of one guy having a clean rep and the other struggling with something silly. Everybody hit some adversity there. But then, Todd Monken gave some real context on why the 2-minute drill specifically matters so much right now. He explained that right now, 2-minute is basically the only situation where the offense is actually stacking plays together instead of just running isolated snaps one after another. 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, the stuff that actually simulates a real drive under pressure. He said the last 2 days in that setting, the offense as a whole has not functioned very well. Some of that he put on the defense getting after the passer well, but he also made a direct point about one guy specifically. He talked about the inconsistencies of Deshaun Watson and said there is no real reason he should be making the number of mistakes he has been making. So think about what that means. The one drill format that is actually built to simulate real game situations, and Shedeur is the one delivering a scoring drive out of it, while his own head coach is publicly pointing out inconsistency from the other quarterback in that exact same setting. Monken did leave the door open a little, saying they will get a clearer picture once practices get longer and they start running more actual drive work as camp progresses. He also said he is not going to draw firm conclusions on any of the quarterbacks until they get into joint practices against the Bills, which are scheduled for Thursday, August 20th, followed by the first preseason game on August 22nd. That timeline matters, because right now, in the one setting where stacked situational plays actually get tested, one quarterback is finishing drives with points on the board, and the other is getting singled out by name for mistakes that, in his own head coach's words, should not be happening at this stage.
Todd Monken spoke about the inconsistencies of Deshaun Watson. As you guys can see in this play right here, there's no reason he's making this many mistakes.
Well, we'll get a better feel for that. Once we have a little bit longer practices, we'll have move the ball sessions. Right now, the only time we're doing that is in 2 minutes. The only time you get us to try and stack plays besides just running one play after the other. Today it's 3rd and 4, it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, right? The only time we have that in 2 minutes. And the last 2 days with them in there, we haven't functioned very well with it. Now some of that, a lot of that has to do with the defense.
So if the head coach is already saying that in training camp, what happens once the pads come off and the real evaluation period against Buffalo actually starts? Here is where the day gets rough for Deshaun Watson specifically. Multiple Browns reporters who were on site for 7-on-7 work all reported the same thing independently. Watson's reps in that period were bad. Not just a rough rep here or there, but described as really, really bad across the board. When multiple separate reporters who are not coordinating with each other land on the same description of a single session, that tends to mean something is actually there. And it did not stop at the reporters. Another report out of camp said Watson is now being booed by Browns fans during live practice periods. Now, to be fair, this is training camp. Fans get restless and pile on fast, especially in Cleveland where quarterback frustration runs deep after years of instability at the position. But once fans start turning on a guy in August, that tends to follow him. It becomes a storyline the coaching staff has to manage whether they want to or not, no matter what actually happens on the practice field from that point forward. There is also the Dillon Gabriel angle worth bringing up here. Fans watched Gabriel deal with a very similar wave of criticism last season before things eventually settled down. If Watson ends up being named the starter after a stretch like this, with reporters flagging bad 7-on-7 tape and fans audibly booing him in live team periods, that is not the kind of environment that sets an organization up for stability at the position. It creates pressure before a single preseason snap has even been played. Compare that to what Shedeur is doing in the exact same building, on the exact same practice fields, in front of the exact same coaching staff. He is the one closing 2-minute drills with scoring drives. He is the one drawing direct praise from Bernie Kosar. He is the one reporters are highlighting for clean, connected drives with real receivers, not getting flagged for a rough stat line. 2 quarterbacks, same camp, same day, 2 completely different storylines walking away from it. And with the Buffalo joint practice and the first preseason game both landing before the end of August, there isn't a lot of runway left before this quarterback competition starts producing real, hard answers instead of just training camp notes.
So as you guys can see, multiple Browns reporters report Deshaun Watson's 7-on-7 experience has been bad, like really, really bad. Another reporter reports Watson currently being booed by Browns fans, and that's not good.
Two quarterbacks, same building, same coaching staff, same day, and yet one of them is walking out with praise and the other is walking out with boos. Now let's talk about how Shedeur actually closed out his day, because this is the part that had Bernie Kosar going out of his way to praise him. Working with the ones, Shedeur led a clean, methodical 2-minute drive that ended in a field goal from Andre Smith. Along the way, he connected multiple times with Gage Laradon and Jerry Jeudy, mixing quick completions with the kind of patience you need to actually work a clock and move the sticks in a real 2-minute situation. That is not just arm talent. That is operating an offense the right way under time pressure, which is exactly the scenario that gets simulated at the highest level on Sundays. Bernie Kosar made the Tom Brady comparison directly, and it is worth sitting with for a second. He pointed out that great players show up in clutch moments, and that is exactly what Shedeur did again here, delivering when the offense's back was against the wall in a 2-minute setting instead of shrinking from it. And the numbers back up the eye test. By the end of the day, the quarterback tracker had Shedeur at 21 of 25, missing only 4 passes across the entire practice. Compare that to Watson at 5 of 11 and Dillon Gabriel at 4 of 7 with an interception. That is not a small gap. That is a significant separation for one single day of work. Kosar's final thoughts on the day summed it up well. He said the defense is still clearly ahead of the offense overall right now, which is normal for this point in August, but he specifically called out how much he has enjoyed watching Shedeur play in pads over the last 2 days, and pointed to something a teammate mentioned earlier, that it is not just about how fast you start, it is about how you finish. He referenced Shedeur's rookie tape from last season, games where he started slow but finished strong, and said he is now seeing that same late-game rhythm and timing show up consistently in practice. Kosar credited the small things specifically: footwork, not drifting in the pocket, the overall operation of running the offense, all of which he said have improved noticeably since day 1 of camp. There was one more small note out of camp worth mentioning too. Rookie receiver Casey Conception went through individual drills but appeared to sit out teamwork, and Monken later confirmed he is simply sore and getting a few days of rest, nothing serious. Just one more piece of context heading into Buffalo week. And the moment right after the field goal drive tells you everything about how the building reacted. Running backs coach Deuce Staley came over from the sideline just to congratulate Shedeur once the kick went through. That is not something that gets orchestrated for the cameras. That is a coach on that staff genuinely pleased with what he just watched from his quarterback in a pressure situation. Watson's twos got that same opportunity right afterward, a 36-yard attempt off a Corey Marquez hold that also went through, so credit where it is due, both units found points in that specific 2-minute window. But the difference nobody can argue with is who actually drove the offense down the field to get there in the first place, and whose reps the entire building was still talking about once practice wrapped for the day.
As we see, Shedeur Sanders was 21 of 25, only missing 4 passes all practice. Deshaun Watson, 5 of 11. Dillon Gabriel, 4 of 7, 1 interception.
Here's the reality check. It is still early August, but right now, the tape, the stats, and the reactions coming out of that building are all telling the exact same story. So where does that leave the Browns' quarterback room heading into the back half of camp? Shedeur closed a 2-minute drill with points on the board again, drew direct praise from Bernie Kosar, and finished the day with a 21 of 25 stat line that separates him clearly from everyone else in that room. Watson, meanwhile, is dealing with a rough 7-on-7 stretch that multiple reporters flagged independently, fans audibly booing him in practice, and his own head coach publicly pointing out inconsistencies that, in Monken's own words, should not be happening at this stage. And through all of it, Shedeur is staying about as even-keeled as it gets. He addressed the quarterback battle talk directly with NFL Live, saying that no matter what anybody outside the building calls it, for him it comes down to competing against himself every single day, not against Watson or Gabriel or anyone else in that room. He explained that every quarterback in that building approaches it the exact same way, going against themselves first, because the real competition on the field every day is offense against defense, not teammate against teammate. That mentality lines up with everything happening on the practice field. When the offense as a whole has struggled or mistakes have piled up around him, Shedeur has stayed locked in and let the next play come to him instead of letting one bad rep spiral into a bad practice. That approach is exactly why Day 6 ended the way it did, with him delivering again when it mattered most, while the story around Watson kept getting worse by the hour. So, heading into the joint practices against Buffalo on August 20th and the first preseason game 2 days later, the question in Cleveland is not really about talent anymore. Nobody doubts Shedeur can play, and nobody is writing off Watson's track record before his injury either. The real question is whether Watson can turn this around before the fan base and the front office make up their minds on their own. Because right now, one quarterback is delivering in the exact moments that matter, and the other is dealing with boos in practice before a single preseason snap has even been played. So here's the question for you. Do you think Deshaun Watson turns this around once the pads come off and joint practices start? Or has Shedeur Sanders already made this quarterback competition a lot less competitive than the Browns want to admit? Let me know down in the comments. Smash like and subscribe.